There I am. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever, wherever, and however you're joining us. Welcome. It is Monday, August 4th, 2025, and welcome to Nachos, the neuroaffirming conversation hour for outreach and support. And welcome, Nacho Nuts, to the very last Nachos of the summer semester. If you're joining us, I hope you've all had a chance to breathe a little this last week while we took a short little break. I was traveling to Lansing for Disability Pride, speaking at the Capitol steps, connecting with advocates from across the state, and reminding folks that the fight for inclusion doesn't end in July. It was powerful, it was energizing, and it left me even more committed to the kind of conversations we have right here every week on Nachos. I spent July 29th in Lansing at the Breaking Barriers Day on the Capitol steps, where disability self-advocates gathered to oppose recent cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. And some of my colleagues called them attacks on autonomy that threatened the ability to live independently. It was powerful to stand alongside folks, raising their voices and affirming, as I said, that we are never, ever, ever going back. That very same day, I also spoke with the Detroit Regional Chamber, discussing the principles of universal design and why inclusive architecture and policies aren't just moral imperatives, they're economic imperatives too. This promoting of accessibility benefits everyone, and business leaders play a critical role in shaping an inclusive future. So today, as we return from break and gear up for fall, I want you to lean into that energy of resistance and possibility. Whether you've spent the week off resting, catching up, or just surviving, you're back with us. And that's what matters. The last Nachos episode of the summer will close out our summer with the spirit it deserves: community, curiosity, and care. So let's draw from the strength we witnessed in Lansing and the ambition of the chamber conversation, because when inclusion is centered, everyone wins. So we close out the summer semester, and I want to remind you of something important. Just because the semester is ending doesn't mean that the learning or the joy or the community has to. In fact, as we shift seasons and schedules, it's the perfect time to remember what keeps us grounded, curious, and connected. So here's our quote of the day. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. George Bernard Shaw said that, and it's a fitting reminder as we celebrate not just one, but two wonderfully playful holidays this week: Play in the Sand Day and Global Kinetic Sand Day. So whether it's the beach, a sandbox, or a tiny container of kinetic sand on your desk, these days are about making space for play, for sensory joy, and for the kind of creativity that doesn't require an outcome. Just movement, just texture, just presence. And if you're someone who finds calm in patterns, comfort in repetition, or magic in the squish of the sand through your fingers, these holidays are for you. For the kids you were, and for the grown-up who deserves to rest and play too. Because play isn't just a break from work. It's a part of the work, especially when we're unlearning burnout and relearning balance. And that idea of balance is not just a metaphor. It's a practice, one we've been building toward all semester. So as we wrap up our time together this summer, I want to turn our attention to your final Humanities 101 project, which asks you to reflect on how we build lives, workplaces, and learning spaces that honor difference without dismantling and diminishing dignity. At the heart of this is a concept we come back to again and again and again here at Nachos: microaccommodations. Microaccommodations aren't big, expensive fixes or formal paperwork. They're the small, intentional changes that make an environment more welcoming, more usable, and all of those things for more people. So turning off the fluorescent lights, allowing movement breaks, offering alternatives to group discussion, letting folks stem, script, or step away without judgment. They're often invisible to the majority, but life changing to those or for those of us who need them. And here's the truth: micro accommodations aren't just about access, they're about belonging, about community. They say, I see you, I trust you, I want to thrive with you, not in spite of you or because I can step on you. When we talk about universal design, that's what we mean. Not just physical ramps, but emotional ones, intellectual ones, framework shifting ones, policy level ones. Permission to show up as your full self without apology. So as you shape your final project, ask yourself, what would it look like to design with delight, not compliance? How do we shift from how do I fix this person to how do I fix the system so it doesn't break people in the first place? This is your chance to take what we've learned, discuss, and explored about play, burnout, access, identity, self-care, self-awareness, and turn it into something real, something future-focused, something that helps build a world where inclusion isn't an afterthought, it's a foundation. And heck, if you're savvy enough, it may be the next multi-million-dollar award-winning project on the Shark Tank. And with that in mind, play, balance, and reimagining access, let's talk about your final project. Reimagining accessibility through microaccommodations. It is your chance to take everything we've explored this semester and turn it into something creative, practical, and full of heart. So identify a space, a system, or a situation where inclusivity is lacking, and they're everywhere. And propose a small, low-cost change, a micro-accommodation. Think under $300. That and this small little change, think about one that could make a huge difference in someone's everyday life. And you can complete either an essay or a video. And so whether you're thinking about physical environment, sensory overload, language access, cultural inclusion, your goal is to help us see how thoughtful design, or even on the smallest scale, can ripple out into big, larger impact. Your project should clearly identify a real-world barrier, identify its or analyze its effects, and then offer a clear, creative solution grounded in the ideas we've explored together. Human-centered, evidence-based ideas. And there's something special with this. After you complete this project, you're invited to submit your project for potential inclusion in the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference that we're holding on October 24th in Dearborn. It's a statewide event that will bring together advocates, students, and leaders to reimagine inclusion across Michigan, and your ideas belong in that conversation. There'll be more details to come, but as part of this innovation challenge, there will be prizes. So check out www.humanities101.org/conference, but don't wait to register. Registration closes September 15th, and spaces are filling quickly. If you need a coupon for the $5 registration fee, contact me. Students from HFC and University of Dearborn can contact me as well for that free admission coupon, because we want your voices at the table. Whether your project lives on the page, on camera, or on the conference floor, this is your chance to shape what a more inclusive world could look like, one micro accommodation at a time. And as you begin dreaming up your final project, I want you to keep one more thing in mind. This work we're doing of redesigning environments and reimagining what inclusion looks like, it's not just about others. It's about us too. It's about making space for our own brains, our own energy, and our own limits. Because fatigue isn't just a vibe. It's not laziness or lack of willpower. It's a neurological reality. And this is proven. In a new study out of the Paris Brain Institute, researchers have used functional MRI scans to explore what happens in the brain when we hit that wall of cognitive fatigue. And they found that two brain regions, the right insula and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, essentially team up to monitor our mental exhaustion and help us decide whether to keep on going or shut down. The insula keeps tabs on how drained we feel, and the prefrontal cortex evaluates if continuing is quote unquote worth it. So what's striking is that most participants only kept going when offered strong external motivators like money. Their brains weren't out of ability. They were just done negotiating the cost. And it's such a powerful reminder that our brains are always doing this silent math in the background. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to me? Is it worth it to this soul? Is it worth it to this body? Do I have anything left to give? And if the mental toll outweighs the perceived reward, the brain begins to conserve energy, just like a good system would. And that's not failure. That's function. And when we try to override that, sometimes can lead to dysfunction. And for those of us in the neurodivergent community, this lands deep. So many of us already lived in a heightened state of cognitive load, juggling sensory input, managing social scripts, translating unspoken rules, and masking parts of ourselves just to stay safe or understood. Our energy gets taxed in ways that aren't visible to others and often not validated either. And yet we push and we perform and we internalize shame when we can't keep up. But this research shows something different. It shows what we talk about here all the time. Our brains are not broken. They're protecting us. So if your brain has ever said, I can't, even when you thought you should be able to, trust your brain. You're not imagining the weight. Your wiring just demands a different kind of care, and that's okay. In fact, someone would say, oh, that's beautiful. And this is why neuroaffirming spaces matter. Why pacing, rest, and microaccommodations are not just luxuries, they're lifelines. Our brains aren't machines. Neither are our bodies. And we don't have to approve our worth by burning out either of those things, our brain or our body. We deserve environments that meet us with flexibility, with grace, and with a quiet reminder that you're doing enough. With a quiet reminder that you are enough, even when you're at rest. So let's kind of hold on to that truth for ourselves and for each other. And when we think about mental fatigue and how our brains signal that something feels unlivable, there's another frontier that we need to explore. One that happens not just above our shoulders, but inside our bodies. And I want to share with you a new study that especially resonates right now. Researchers in Kyoto have developed a tiny lung on a chip, a microfluidic device made from human stem cells that mimics the different regions of the lung, like the airways and so forth. It allows scientists to model how viruses like COVID-19 affect those regions differently. And because these chips are created from stem cells tailored to individuals, they can simulate how one person's lungs might respond to illness or treatment differently than another's. And it's wild and wondrous science, a tiny personalized window into the body's inner landscape. Imagine being able to study infection in real time without putting a human body at risk. Imagine designing treatments that are responsive, not reactive. Tools like this make medicine more accurate, more humane, and more personal. So why does this matter to us? Because it reminds us of something central here at NACHOS, the importance of recognizing and honoring difference. Just as neural fatigue isn't visible from the outside, neither are the ways our bodies, especially disabled or chronically ill bodies, react to stress, viruses, or medications. This chip is one tiny but mighty example of designing with real human variance in mind. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's a model of care that says your biology matters. Your response is real. And for neurodivergent folks, and for anyone whose body or mind doesn't conform to the default, this is an affirming metaphor. Variability isn't a flaw in the system. Variability is the system. Let me repeat that. Variability is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. So just as we advocate for microaccommodations in schools and workplaces and in the general public, tools like this remind us that healthcare too should be built around our experiences, not despite our experiences. So as we continue leaning into rest, balance, and redesigning systems from the inside out, let's remember inclusion isn't just about access. It's about curiosity. It's about care, about designing for real human beings in all of our complexity and in all of our brilliance. And we are worth designing for, every single one of you. Let's gently transition from our reflection on biology and fatigue into another story that resonates with some of the same themes of respect, autonomy, and designing spaces that honor real differences. This next piece of news warmed my heart. A school has launched a driver's education program tailored for students with autism and ADHD and other related neurodevelopmental diagnoses. Unlike typical programs, this one includes more hours behind the wheel, greater flexibility in pacing and individualized instruction to meet each learner's needs. Designed to reduce sensory overload and accommodate different processing speeds, it offers a suite of modifications, longer training sessions, clearer verbal and visual coaching, and the option for calm one-on-one drives. The instructors highlighted strengths often overlooked. Many autistic driving students bring incredible focus on rules, a habit of anticipating others' behaviors, and a strong attention to detail. These assets, paired with careful scaffolding, lead to confident, capable drivers. We know this. But we get there on our own timeline. And so this is why this matters to our NACHOS framework. When mainstream systems expect people to conform to rigid timelines, sensory expectations, or one-size-fits-all instruction, they reinforce the message that neurodivergent brains are wrong or behind. But this program says something entirely different. And I'm proud to say this program is in Michigan. This program says you deserve instruction, and you deserve instruction built around how you learn. You bring strengths and, yes, challenges that are real and valid, and you don't need to push yourself towards breakdown to earn inclusion. It's neuroaffirmation in motion. It's the same principle behind microaccommodations, minor shifts that align environments with diverse ways of being. For a teen who might be overwhelmed by a crowded classroom or distracted by small noises, letting them learn driving at their own pace in a calmer place, well, that's radical access. Those students aren't just gaining a license, they're developing autonomy, building confidence, and rewriting the narrative that neurodivergent bodies can navigate this world. And that matters. It shouldn't matter in every classroom, every design meeting. It should matter everywhere. It should matter in every policy conversation. But it doesn't often even get thought of. So if you've ever been told a timeline is too long or your pace is too slow, know that it's not about fixing you, it's about fixing the system, about adapting the system to how you learn. And watching these driving programs change lives reminds us yet again that when we design inclusively, we all benefit. Because I'm sure there'll be lots of people that don't agree with inclusion who will agree with the economic benefits of someone having their own driver's license and being able to have a job where they can drive. So let's carry that vision forward in how we live, and how we learn, and how we build communities. Spaces that let our brain, or let every brain, my brain, your brain, all of our brains flourish on its own terms. But the truth is, and you nacho knots know this, not everyone is being given this chance to flourish. We can celebrate progress like neuroaffirming driving programs or personalized medical tools, but we also have to face the very real, very urgent truth. There are powerful forces right now working to strip away the rights and supports that allow disabled people and those who think differently to survive, let alone thrive. Across the country and right here in Michigan, we're seeing proposed cuts to programs and rollbacks of benefits and attacks on the very accommodations and protections that so many of us rely on just to live with dignity, like public education. And this isn't just theoretical, it's happening and it's targeted. These policies aren't being framed as cost-saving measures or reforms, but let's be honest. They're attacks on autonomy, on inclusion, on the right to exist in public, to access care, to navigate the world with support instead of shame. And that's why I went to Lansing. That's why I stood on the Capitol steps for Disability Pride Month, shoulder to shoulder with other advocates and allies, not just to celebrate identity, but to defend it. Because while pride is beautiful, it's not enough. We're being marginalized actively, intentionally, and systematically. And we have to respond with more than just resilience, more than just smiles. We have to respond with resistance. I went to Lansing to say we are still here, we are watching, and we are not going back. Not to institutionalization, not to invisibility, not to policies written without us, for us, that harm us in the name of efficiency or order. And I'll keep speaking. We'll keep organizing. Because neurodivergent and disabled lives are not a budget line to trim. They're lives and humans worth protecting. Humans worth designing for. Humans worth celebrating loudly, proudly, and without apology. And I will keep speaking. And we'll keep organizing because neurodivergent and disabled humans are not a budget line beyond trimming. But celebration alone isn't enough when harmful decisions are being made behind closed doors, especially when those decisions wear the mask of protection, while quietly undermining trust, access, and care. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now with HHS Secretary RFK Jr., who recently approved the removal of thimerosal from flu vaccines, a move driven less by scientific consensus and more by long-standing debunked fears that links vaccines to autism. And let's be clear, this isn't a step forward for safety, it's a step backwards for science. And for those of us in the disability and neurodivergent communities, it's a chilling reminder of how easily our lives can be politicized, how our very existence becomes a talking point, a controversy, or a scapegoat. RFK approved this sweeping recommendation from his handpicked vaccine advisory panel to remove this mercury-based preservative from all influenza vaccines distributed in the U.S. And while it may sound like a cautious protective step, the real story is far more complex. Many critics argue this action was driven not by new evidence of harm, but by ideology linked to anti-vaccine beliefs long associated with RFK. Under his leadership, agency leadership was restructured and long-standing advisory processes were sidestepped. Thimerosal had been used for decades in multi-dose flu shot vials and had been extensively studied, with numerous public organizations affirming its safety. Removal of the preservative will affect very few current vaccines, and it's largely symbolic of broader shifts in policymaking. Small, actual changes with big announcements and seemingly huge wins. Critics warn this decision risks undermining public trust in vaccine science, increasing healthcare costs, and potentially limiting access, especially in communities that rely on multi-dose vials for distribution. What worries me here is not the actual mercury preservative itself, but what this moment reveals about how policy decisions are being made and who gets to speak for science, who gets to speak for me. When decisions are swayed by ideology rather than evidence, there's real harm, particularly for marginalized groups and autistic people. Communities with disabilities and neurodivergent brains often face medical skepticism, dismissal, and censorship. And when leaders tap into anti vaccine narratives, they risk amplifying distrust and dismantling access. And just as we saw with proposed Medicaid cuts and SNAP rollbacks, it's not stopping. Our pursuit of neuroaffirmation depends on the structures rooted in integrity and transparency. We deserve public health policy that listens to expertise, values lived experience, and resists misinformation. Because when leadership distorts science or sidesteps data, that distortion isn't abstract. It reverberates through caregiving, disability service, access to accommodation, and faith in our institutions. We've seen what happens when people's needs, especially those whose bodies or brains are already considered outside the norm, are ignored or maligned. That's why I was in Lansing. That's why advocacy matters, because inclusion isn't just about designing spaces or adding ramps. It's about ensuring that our rights and our realities aren't rewritten by politics masquerading as science. This isn't about flu shots. It's about trust. It's about whether the health and autonomy of disabled and neurodivergent lives are protected or pushed to the margins by decisions made without transparency, consultation, or accountability. Hell, without evidence. Because when trust erodes in these institutions, so does access. And when access collapses, so does participation. And when we're seeing quietly and steadily is a march backward. Not always with loud announcements or press releases or flashy warning signs, but in the slow unraveling of protections, in the erosion of credibility, in the willingness of some to weaponize disability narratives not to include, but to exclude. And we've seen it before. History offers us patterns, and those patterns offer warnings. As students of humanities, this is where we have to pause and pay attention. When science is bent to fit ideology, when disabled people are used as rhetorical pawns, when language of freedom is used to justify disinformation or exclusion, we have to ask, who is being left out of the future being imagined here? And what kind of society are we building intentionally or otherwise when we stop listening to those who live on the margins? The humanities teaches us to recognize these crossroads, to see how decisions made under the guise of safety or savings can lead to segregation, silencing, or even systemic neglect. And it's our responsibility, not just as students, not just as citizens, but as human beings on this planet Earth, to name that trajectory, to disrupt it, and to imagine something better. Because if we don't, the march backward continues. And with each step, more people are left behind. More people are forgotten. So what did we learn from today's final episode of the summer semester? We began by grounding ourselves in the importance of balance, how play, rest, and creative exploration aren't distractions from the work of learning or advocacy, but essential parts of it. Through playful holidays like Play in the Sand Day and Global Kinetic Sand Day, we were reminded that joy and sensory engagement aren't just for kids. They're lifelong tools for regulation, reflection, and repair. And that's self-care. And remember, that's sacred. From there, we turned our attention to the final project where you're invited to reimagine accessibility through the lens of microaccommodations. We talked about how small changes, gentle, thoughtful, can open up entirely new worlds of inclusion. And it's not just academic work, it's real-world application of neuroaffirmation, designing for human variation rather than conformity. We then explored a powerful brain study that showed us how cognitive fatigue is real, trackable, and protective. It's not a personal failure. And we sat with that truth that our brains, especially our neurodivergent ones, are constantly working behind the scenes to help us survive systems that weren't built with us in mind. And that's self-discovery. That's learning to trust the body we live in. And from there, we zoomed into the body itself with a lung on a chip study that reminded us that even on the cellular level, individual variability matters. Medical innovation that honors difference instead of erasing it. That's what inclusive science should look like. It affirmed what we already know. Neurodiversity and disability are not glitches in the system. They are the system. We need models, medical, educational, cultural, and otherwise, that reflect that. We also celebrated an example of what happens when systems adapt. A driver's ed program designed specifically for autistic and neurodivergent learners. More time, more options, more respect. And it's a real life example of microaccommodation becoming macro impact. That's inclusion that empowers. That is exponential. And that's neuroaffirmation in action. But we didn't just stop there. We got honest about the threats we were facing too. We examined the rollback of disability protections and the manipulation of public health narratives like RFK Jr.'s thimerosal decision, not as isolated events, but as part of a wider movement that devalues disabled lives under the pretense of quote unquote protection. And that's why we speak out, why we organize, why we are building community, because resistance too is a form of care. And finally, we circled back to what the humanities always asks of us: to recognize the patterns, to tell the truth about the trajectory we're on, and to imagine something better, something bolder, something built not in reaction to who we fear, but an affirmation of who we love, who we are, and who we want to be. So as we close out the summer semester, I hope you're carrying not just information, but intention, a deeper commitment to your own care, a sharper eye for injustice, and a growing trust in your voice, your story, and your right to take up space in every room, in every system, in every future. Because you're not a burden. You are the blueprint. And before we close out today's episode, just a few important reminders to keep in mind as we wrap up summer semester and get ready for the season ahead. Remember that starting September 1st, Nachos will be moving to a new time slot at 12 noon Eastern. Same place, same energy, just a new time slot that we hope gives everybody a little bit more chance to join us live or tune in over lunch, and then stick around afterwards to talk. If you haven't already, come hang with us in the Discord. With the new season, we're going to have some afternoon hangouts on Mondays, some check-ins, some nachos at night. But again, ways to make sure that you are getting the connection, fellowship, and community that you need. Our Discord is a wonderful place. It's a space for conversation, questions, resources, and connection with fellow Nacho Knots throughout the week. And remember, whether you've heard about it today or you've known about it for a while, you already belong there. And if you'd like to support the upcoming Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference that's happening October 24th in Dearborn, Michigan, we'd be incredibly grateful. We're working to keep the event virtually free for attendees, and your support helps us get there. We're looking for sponsors. We're looking for individual donors. We're looking for registrants. You can find all of this on GoFundMe, our conference details page, and all of that information, free registration information, especially for HFC and U of M Dearborn students, all at www.humanities101.org/conference. And as always, if today's episode moved you, helped you, or gave you something to think about, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you tune in. Your support, your clicks, your likes help grow this community. And they're as valuable as those dollars because they spread these communications and these conversations to more people, more communities, and even further than I can even ever have imagined. Now, let's end how we always do by returning to ourselves and remembering what's true. You are not broken for needing rest. You're not weak for walking away from what drains you. You're allowed to move at your own pace. And you're allowed to ask for what helps you stay whole, stay full. Your brain is not too much, and your body is not too complicated. The way you process, the way you feel, the way you show up, it all matters. You don't have to twist yourself into someone else's version of success or productivity or worth. You are allowed to be fully, completely, and beautifully you. You are worthy of care even when the world doesn't offer it easily. And you're worthy of protection even when policies forget about you or outright are hostile to you. You're worthy of joy even when the system and the people who run it say otherwise. You're worthy of being here exactly as you are without apology. And when things get heavy, and they will get heavy, remember this. You're not alone. You are a part of a lineage of thinkers, dreamers, and disruptors. You're a part of a community that believes in building better. You're part of a movement that begins right here with you. So rest when you need, speak when you're ready, and never forget you're not the problem. You're the possibility. So I'll see you soon, Nacho Nuts. Keep going with gentleness, with fire, and with a whole hell of a lot of love. Until next time.